Where does Donald Trump stand on the World Health Organization? And by the way, Donald Trump has come out on one of the social media, True Social, saying that the vaccines were safe and effective, and I could not
Yes, he
believe.
have.
I,
And I was just going to show you, I was just going to share his tweet saying the vaccines that saved so many lives in COVID uh, are now being used to cure cancer. And
yes,
then he says, you're welcome, Joe Biden. 9 months instead of the 12 years it would have taken you. Where does he stand on these kill shots that are now documented to be Department of Defense and DARPA bioweapons? He stands proudly behind them. Where does he stand on the WHO? He says, when I'm elected, we will withdraw from WHO. Well, what about the United Nations? And let me tell you what he did not do. Most people in the world who are interested in this, Tony, believe that Donald Trump withdrew the United States from the WHO and Joe Biden put us back in. That's not true. What happened was this. Donald Trump knew, or had the responsibility to know, that unless the head of state writes the letter removing the country, it has no weight. You could ask your grandmother to write it. It has no weight whatsoever. So he directed the head of the Department of State, Mike Pompeo, to write the letter of withdrawal, which, as I said, is like asking your grandmother to write the letter of withdrawal for Canada. It has no meaning. None. Then Donald Trump took the annual assessment and the voluntary additional assessment that we pay to the World Health Organization, and he gave it to Gavi, the Bill Gates Global Vaccine and Immunization Alliance. Well, where do you think that money would go? It would go, which is, of course, Gates vaccine WHO cabal. It would go to the WHO. It was twinkle toes tap dance nonsense designed to confuse and bemuse and create an unreal perception of Donald Trump's position. That is consistent with supporting the alleged vaccines. That is consistent with not saying we will withdraw on the day that I am elected.
so what bothers me is this genocide going on, and Donald Trump not. I mean, he did some things that I did like, but the only one down in the U.S. of A. is Robert Kennedy. That's
he's not saying it either. What he said on November 7th in an interview that was the kiss of death as far as my potential support for him is. On November 7th, and you can look it up, he gave an interview in which he said he was asked about mandatory vaccines. And he said, I don't believe that we should force anything into anyone's arm. That's good, right? No mandated vaccines, unless the next word out of his mouth, wait, I'll tell you what the unless was. Unless we have definitive proof that they are safe and effective. And he said, he then went, I mean, that's a jaw dropper. And then he went on to say that when the United States Institute of Medicine, the IOM, declares something to be safe and effective, then we have definitive proof that it is safe and effective. Really, really. So as long as we have a captured agency that issues a statement, then we are within our rights and our moral correctitude to force things into people's bodies that they do not wish, violating any informed consent. Really? No, not happening. And he has never said, and we are withdrawing from not even the WHO, let alone the United Nations. And to make matters worse, he has never said, despite all the research that he's done on vaccines and mercury and autism, he has never said vaccines must be banned. And in fact, it is very clear the more vaccinated a country is, the sicker the country is, and the more autism there is. Very clear. I've written a book on this. I'm quite confident that the data is unambiguous. He has never taken that position. He takes the waffly mouthed, mealy-minded position. Well, what we need are safer vaccines. If you inject pus and poison into somebody's body, it's never going to be safe. Period.
No, it ain't. Would you believe we got 4 minutes left in this
Ooh.
podcast? It's like,
Okay.
I should leave the floor to you, whatever you want to say to our viewers, and you'll be on again because you're one of our regulars. So,
Thank you.
yeah, we enjoy having you. So,
Of course, we have to figure out the time zones. Okay, here's what I want to say. The most imperative thing in our world is to get our country out of the United Nations. Forget WHO. It's a servant. It's a servo mechanism for the destruction of Agenda 2030, etc. We have to get out. PreventGenocide2030.org allows Canadians to tell their MPs that the 90,000 people who signed a petition that will be presented to them are just the tip of the vast majority of Canadians who want life, liberty, freedom, happiness, and don't want destruction. That means they want out of the UN. Tell them. If you don't tell them, you're polluting with the enemy. For people in the US, we must support the bill that is before the Congress called, let me say the name of the act, and that tells you why we have to support it. It's called Disengaging Entirely from the UN Debacle Act, and you can go to Prevent Genocide 2030 and support that there. This is critically important unless you want to be destroyed.